Welcome to Game Discovery and my 6th episode of Forgotten Indies You Need to Remember, where we look at old indie games that have been lost to time or never really discovered in the first place. My first game today is Mercenary Kings, released in 2014. I played this game when it came out and I didn't really like it, but I decided to revisit it for this video and really fell in love with it. Looking at this footage, you can see graphically it is heavily inspired by Metal Slug. And I think the reason I didn't like it the first time I played it is I was expecting a Metal Slug clone, and that's not what this is. Sure, it's a run and gun, but rather than just your standard run through every level and fight a boss at the end, the game introduces a bunch of elaborate systems. You take on a number of different missions in each area, you collect a bunch of parts, and then craft a whole arsenal of crazy weapons and items. You revisit each area multiple times, but you're doing different things, from rescuing hostages to gathering materials and fighting bosses. I found it really fun exploring each level in depth to uncover its secrets, and the weapon system was really elaborate, allowing for tons of different variety in how you fight the enemies. You also get a cool knife that can reflect bullets. When this game came out, it definitely got a good amount of fanfare, but nobody really talks about it anymore, and that's a shame, because not only is it a great run and gun, but it's also very unique, and not just another Contra or Metal Slug clone. Definitely worth checking out if you've never played it before. Hard Reset, released in 2012, is a boomer shooter in a time before the genre really even had a name. You think about what first-person shooters were like back in 2012, and they were beginning to stray from that classic crazy shoot everything you see stuff that you would see in early stuff like Doom. Nowadays we have a whole genre dedicated to games like this, but Hard Reset was kind of unique for its time. It has a really cool cyberpunk aesthetic, a ton of cool weapons, and lots of things to shoot. The graphics are also more modern than what you see in most boomer shooters nowadays, at least modern for 2012. Obviously they're not going to hold up to today's standards, and you get it all in a nice compact campaign that will take you about 6 hours to finish. I fell in love with this game when it was released, and I think it aged pretty well. Definitely something that fans of boomer shooters who missed it the first time need to experience. Braveland Wizard, released in 2014, is the second in the Braveland series, which are simple tactical RPGs. Now look, I'm not going to tell you that these games are the next coming of Final Fantasy Tactics, but I kind of have a soft spot for them. They are not graphically impressive. In fact, the whole game kind of has a mobile aesthetic. I'm not sure if it started out as a phone game, but it certainly feels like it. But what's here is good, simple fun. You have a nice variety of different characters and classes that you could upgrade via skill trees and equipment. The battles all take place on a single screen. You don't have to worry about complex things like elevation, and you can beat the whole thing in a couple hours. I think it took me 3 hours to beat on my first go, but there is an endless dungeon mode if you want to extend your playtime. Despite its simplicity, there is something charming about this series. I am a huge fan of tactics games, and sometimes it's nice to just kick back and enjoy a simple series of tactical battles with adorable characters and fun combat. I also think it's probably a great starting point for someone who has never played a tactical RPG and is a little intimidated by some of the more grand adventures like Tactics Ogre. We will do one more tactics game, and this one is definitely one of my favorites. Skulls of the Shogun, released in 2013, tells a tale of a general trying to reclaim his identity in the afterlife. This game has an absolutely wonderful aesthetic. At the time it was released, some would say it was the Castle Crashers of tactics games, and I think that's a pretty good analogy. The game has a unique visual flair, lots of personality, and a really well-written story with fantastically funny dialogue. The game itself is a tactical game, which is on the short side, with 24 levels and only take you a couple hours to finish, but there is no padding or annoying filler content here. It's just really well done, and every minute is engaging. This is one of those games where you're just never bored. Tactical combat is familiar yet unique. You don't move on a grid. Instead, you have a sphere of movement and get several actions per turn. You could also eat the skulls of your defeated enemies to power up your units and keep your health up. There are lots of cool systems at play when you combine all this, and it becomes a juggling act of when to attack, when to power up, and knowing when to bring in your powerful general into the mix. This is one of those games that I fell in love with on its release so much that I doubled it for the physical release years later on the Switch, but I never really hear it get talked about anymore, and that's a shame. I feel like tactics games are becoming more popular nowadays, and this is one that definitely needs to be remembered when we talk about the genre greats. Sweezy Gunner is a really cool overhead shooter. If you're watching this footage, it looks like a twin stick, and it definitely definitely plays like one, but there is no controller support, so just be aware of that before you buy. I personally used X-Padder to make it compatible with the controller, and it worked pretty well. I just love games like this, that kind of mixes the Legend of Zelda with the shooting element. We have some great modern examples of this, like Trigger Witch and Mini Shoot Adventures, but this game released all the way back in 2014, kind of leading the charge for this style of game. You explore a vast overworld with a bunch of dungeons and ton of enemies to shoot. As the game progresses, it definitely starts to delve into bullet hell territory, as the patterns get pretty wild, but there's also a really nice upgrade system, so you get stronger with the enemies and you never really feel overwhelmed. The game also throws some great boss battles at you that are all really fun and just spray bullets everywhere. This is definitely a hidden gem. Despite the lack of controller support, if you love twin stick shooters, this is a game you'll probably enjoy that you almost certainly have not heard of before. Our most obscure game on today's list is Prometheus the Fire Thief, released in 2015 and currently sitting at 6 Steam reviews. This is a metroidvania that is heavily inspired by Battle of Olympus. If you haven't played that game on the NES, it is kind of a hidden gem that is a great example of an early metroidvania with a really cool ancient Greece theme. This is like a spiritual sequel to that. It's the same aesthetic with a character sprite that kind of has a similar way about him. The combat feels pretty similar, even down to the way enemies flash when you hit them. There's a large world to explore, and while there are modern conveniences, the game still retains some of that old school crypticness, like the item not always telling you what the items do. The boss battles here are all fun, monstrous behemoths taken right out of ancient Greece, and the game really nails that 8-bit feel that will evoke nostalgia to anyone who played Battle Olympus, or really any platform around the NES. It retails full price for $5, and definitely worth taking a look at, since you almost definitely didn't play it the first time around. I'm not sure that this game is as forgotten as others on this list, as it recently got a remake, but Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds is some cool beat 'em up that flies a bit under the radar and originally released in 2015. The game stands out for its unique visual aesthetic that fans of anime will really enjoy. There are over-the-top explosions and really dynamic, flashy attacks. This game is based off a fighting game. I never played that one, but it does wear some of that inspiration on its sleeve. The combat is simple enough for anyone to pick up and play. Stringing together attacks, dashes, and cool combos is simple. At the same time, there is a leveling system that allows you to unlock new attacks and tailor the character to your playstyle. It adds a nice twist to the classic formula and helps avoid some of the repetition that can be associated with this genre. This game came out before the beat-em-up resurgence kicked off by Streets of Rage 4, and it is a really solid and fun game that, in my view, was ahead of its time and deserves to be more in the conversation about fun modern-day brawlers. There is a remaster that released about a year ago. I haven't played that one to tell you the difference, but this classic game is a lot of fun and often goes on sale for just a little over $1. The Cave, released in 2013, is an adventure game made by Ron Dilbert, the creator of Maniac Mansion and Monkey Island, 2 incredible point-and-click classics. I have a particular soft spot for Maniac Mansion, as it is the first adventure game I ever played, and one of the most unique games on the NES. But despite the pedigree, this is not your classic point-and-click, and instead plays more like a puzzle platformer. It kind of reminds me of Lost Viking in its gameplay structure. You get 3 characters with different abilities that you have to use in a variety of ways to solve puzzles, often having to use multiple characters at the same time. One cool twist that sets it apart is that there are a total of 7 characters, and you have to assemble a team of 3. This gives the game some replay value, as there are sections unique to each character and different ways to solve some puzzles depending on who is in your party. The character design is silly, with a nice sense of humor, and includes characters like a hillbilly and a time traveler. Each also comes with their own little story segments and motivation for descending into the cave. I thought the puzzles were really well done. I'm not great at these games, but I was able to beat it without a walkthrough, which is always a good sign of solid game design. I'm not typically a huge fan of games like this, but this really won me over with its quirky characters, charming sense of humor, and fun puzzle design. So let me know down in the comments below which games I missed and you'd want to see featured on a future episode of Forgotten Indies You Need to Remember.
Enough about you. This is about them.